Welcome everybody to the May 9th Ortelius architecture meeting. Let me go ahead and share my screen. There, no, there it is. All right, let me copy the link for everybody. Chat. So just to bring everybody up to speed, one of the things that we did while we were out at CDCon was we introduced the what we're calling the Hero Project. Basically, it's about what we've been talking about around updating, gathering the metrics and metadata without having to change the existing pipelines. And to do that, we're looking at the CDEvents as part of that process. So we can kind of listen for events happening out of the pipeline tools, capture them, and then when we find certain events that are interesting to us, that will kick off Ortelius to do some stuff. So some of the things that we're interested in is, let's say, when an artifact is created or an SBOM is generated. Those are the types of events that we're interested in. One of the things that I've kind of found in that we've run into is there's a disconnect between, or there, I wouldn't say a disconnect. There just it doesn't exist a connection between a source code commit and the artifact that was created. So because we have no way to go from an artifact backward to a source code commit, we can look at these artifact repositories like npm and PyPy and things like that, but we have no way to, and we know from the SBOM perspective that those packages, those artifacts are being used, but we have no way to go and do anything with the interrogate like the Git repo and stuff like that. The message queue piece is actually pretty easy. Let me find it. It is, I think it's called Nats CNCF. There it is. So there's a cloud native project called Nats. Basically, it is a persistent message queue. It's kind of beefed up more so than what we think of like as a Kafka or even inside of Kubernetes, you have the Knative message queues. So one of the things that we want to look at is standing up the Nats. So Sasha, I may throw this over to you on your side to actually just get like Nats running locally. I believe it runs in Kubernetes basically, so I think we can just throw it into with the Helm chart, get things up and going pretty easy on that front. And once we know that Nats is up and running, then there's some sample Python code from the CDEvents and also some sample code that we could. So there's sample code on the CDEvents side for publishing let's say a cloud event, push it into Nats, and then be able to retrieve that. So I think all that aspect around the message queue, when we look at this middle piece, is actually the pretty easy piece. The more difficult piece is on the left-hand side here, how we're going to handle the existing pipelines. Now, one of the things like with Jenkins, and like, let me just put the like our goal uh, is to uh, link the git commit of the source to the artifact. I want to, what do I want to call them? Public artifact repository. So that's kind of our goal. And once we have this link between the two, then we can go on to like the the next step. Uh, the second step is to fill in the blanks, fill in the missing metrics. So in that case, it would be like the OpenSSF scorecard. What would be the SBOM, uh, provenance, those type of things would be our kind of our second step that we need to do. So um, we've talked to like Mark Waite on the Jenkins side. I talked to a DC on the Spinnaker side. GitHub, GitHub and GitLab. We don't really have any contacts with, so those are going to be something that we're going to have to. GitHub actually isn't that bad because it's pretty well structured. But one of the things that, let's take for example on the Jenkins side, Jenkins has a plugin for CDEvents that Fidelity wrote. So when Jenkins runs a workflow, that plugin will publish a like a starting workflow event and then a finished workflow event. And that's about all it does. The pieces that are missing are everything that happens in the middle. So it's great that we know that a workflow started. It's great that we know a workflow ended, but we don't know anything that happened in the middle. So we have no idea about the artifacts that were created, if it was a Docker build or if it was a Maven build, where the artifacts were sent off to. Like in the case of just even in Docker, did they, like we use Quay, so we publish our images off to Quay. Other teams will publish them off to Docker Hub, and most companies will publish them probably to a local Harbor instance on that level. So, kind of the hurdles on that front. I'll fix the spelling later. Um, the hurdles are on the Jenkins. Just one is initial configuration. It's minor, but one of the minor things that we run into is we need to like configure the CDEvents message queue address. The other thing that we're going to have to, so that's like, well, even before that, you may have to install uh, the events plugin. Then you have to configure it, uh, and from there, um, I think those will be the two minimal things. So if we go into a company, let's say Chase Bank, and we want to say, okay, Chase, we want you to go and install the CDEvents plugin. To get them to do that by the Jenkins administrator uh, is going to require approvals and stuff like that. So it's just a barrier to adoption. Um, and same thing if we get into like on the GitHub action side, we would need to have them create a new, uh, add stuff to their workflow YAML files to kick off the events. So we're back into the same, it's kind of like a catch-22. We're back to where we started. In order for somebody to use CDEvents, they have to go and update all of their workflows or go and install plugins. So that's kind of where we're in this catch-22 because that's what we're trying to fix is how do we update these plugins and gather the metrics and metadata without changing any workflows at that level. So does that kind of make sense on the problem that we're kind of running into and what we're trying to some of the hurdles of what we need to figure out how to work around?
Makes sense. I just deployed Nats into my Kubernetes cluster using Argo.
Cool.
Mm,
I figured you'd be able to kick it off, get it working pretty quick.
yeah, it's running. Argo CD is taking care of it.
Cool.
Yeah, but I don't know what it does. But it looks
Yeah,
nice.
yeah,
Little blocks.
yeah. There is a there should be some test cases we can throw at it, and I'll come up with that as well. Uh, some of the stub programs that we can use just to test it out.
Does it have
Um,
a web interface or something?
I don't know. I have not. I think it does. Um,
It's definitely got a database.
and the second hurdle that we have is the CI/CD tools require kind of different configurations. So one of my thoughts is that we kind of do this from the outside looking in. Um, so one of the things I was looking at was, let's say we install this. We'll call it. I don't know. We have to come up with a name for our CDEvents. So we install the CDEvents message queue in place. And then with the Ortelius, we actually uh, have another microservice that will go out and that we can configure from the Ortelius side that will say, where's your Jenkins server, for example? So, or where is your GitLab server at that level? And one of the things, if we just take Jenkins, for example, is you can go and query through the Jenkins RESTful APIs a list of all the workflows that exist out there. And then you can also query all the workflow runs for each workflow. So you can get like the build number or the workflow number from Jenkins through the RESTful APIs. And we can do this kind of polling process from the Ortelius microservice side that can go through and say, oh, I recognize that Jenkins has ran this new workflow, this pipeline. Let me go get details about that workflow. So I can get the start time, I can get the logs for it, I can get the ending time. And with that information, we could actually then trigger the appropriate CD event. Now, there will be a delay because we're doing a polling mechanism at that level. So let's say we have the Ortelius microservice check Jenkins every half hour, for example. We could go out, check, and see, oh, we found 5 new jobs out there. We're going to create 5 new CD events for the starting and ended. So we could catch something where it actually ran within, 10 minutes. So it started and finished. So we'd actually publish both events to the message queue out there. We have the delay, but I think it'll work. None of this stuff has to be real time. And we may catch a scenario where it's we're at our half-hour window. At 28 minutes after we catch the start of a workflow run, and it runs for 10 minutes. So in the next window, we catch the finish at that level. So I think should be good enough for us to do this polling. One of the nice things when we do the polling is we can actually pull all of the tools kind of in a generic fashion. So if we're going to be talking to GitHub, we'd have to use the GitHub APIs to do the polling to get the same data. But at the end of the day, we're going to be producing the CD event for that appropriate thing. Now, like I said, this gets us to the same level that you would have if you needed to install the CDEvents Jenkins plugin. So we know the start and stop of the workflows. If a Jenkins server already has that installed, we just don't configure Ortelius to go off and do the polling. Pretty simple on that front. So we know there's a start and stop of the workflow, and we know that we're able to get to the logs of the workflow. Now the next part is the ugly part, where we would have to parse the log files and look for certain things to happen. So, for example, was there a Docker push that happened? Was there an SBOM that generation that happened in there? Was scorecard run in there? So we're going to have to parse the log files and look for those specific events to happen. Now, one of the nice things when we're looking at the raw log data is in the Jenkins world, it sounds like they've moved in your Jenkins pipeline. Most companies have, according to Mark Waite, your Jenkins pipeline is like 3 or 4 steps, and all Jenkins does is go off and run a bunch of scripts. So instead of using the Groovy libraries and all the Groovy stuff inside of Jenkins, they're literally just calling out to a shell script to go off and do the work. Now, all that shell script output ends up being placed into the Jenkins log. So this kind of, us looking at the log file does give us the ability to ignore all the syntax of a Jenkins file and all the convoluted ways people can create them. We'll be able to look at the end result of, a Docker push is going to be pretty standard. You'll know that you end up with a SHA of the push of the Docker image. You'll know the tag, those type of things that we'll be able to grab by parsing the log files. And the information that we're going to need to grab is going to be pretty minimal from what I could tell. we're going to have things like on the Docker side, the Docker image, um, the like on PyPy, we'll have the package version. So there's going to be some pretty well-known regular expressions that we could use to go through and find those things when we parse the log file. So that's kind of where my thinking's at on this front. Um, does that sound like a reasonable place to start with dealing with some of these hurdles?
So can I just
Yep.
replay back what you said now?
Yep.
So Nats is like a layer in front of Kubernetes, in front of Ortelius. That's Ortelius is going to be queried. Is that right? Will Nats query Ortelius for the info, or will Nats send the info to Ortelius?
Nats will
Is
be
he,
doing the CDEvents message routing.
so it's collating all that information and then sending it into Ortelius. Okay. Is
Right.
that
So
right?
it's we have like two pieces. Um, so the first piece is to right. So the first piece is none of the CI/CD tools produce the CD events. So the
Hmm.
CD events are missing. Um, like I said, you can install the plugins, do some of that configuration stuff, but that's kind of like the hurdles that we're talking about. So um, basically, we're missing the CD events. So the microservice to go out and do the polling would be responsible for producing the CD events. So that's like phase one or part A of the
Yeah.
solution. Part B is the consumption of the events. So I haven't really talked about that yet. So on the consumption side, we get an event saying, and it doesn't matter where it comes from, whether it's our little microservice producing the events or if it's a native Jenkins plugin or a Spinnaker plugin that's producing the events. We get an event saying that a SBOM was created. So on our consumption side, we'll listen for events saying an SBOM was created. Oh, great. We know that this SBOM was associated with this artifact and this Git repo. So that gives us that link to be able to mirror or pair the source code with the artifact and the source code with the SBOM. And then from there, once we get that SBOM event, we can actually do the things that Ortelius does, whether we need to generate, in the case of an SBOM event, we just want to suck in that SBOM into Ortelius and pair it up with the right component version on that front. In the case of, let's say, it's an artifact that's being published, but there is no SBOM that exists for that artifact, we can actually listen for that event and go, okay, we have an artifact published event. There's no SBOM out there. Let's go ahead and generate an SBOM for it. So, and once we generate the SBOM for it, we can then actually publish another SBOM event that would say, I created this SBOM. So you get into that whole event-driven process on that level. So there's two sides to the coin.
Because your Kubernetes is like your producer of all the messaging, right? Well, your pipeline, because it's being
Yep.
shoved in there, and your pipeline sending out all this messaging into the events,
Yep.
right?
So the
It's
NATs
city
that,
events, and city event sends it into Ortelius. So we don't need
yep.
NATs, but only when you start getting really huge, large scale, then you start needing NATs to manage all of that messaging flow. Is that right?
Well, NATs is the pub sub
Okay.
architecture. So
Okay.
what ends up happening is on our side A or step A, on our producing side, we're going to produce the CD event and we're going to publish it to NATs. So we're going to push it into NATs, and NATs is then going to say, "Oh, I have these 10 subscribers that are listening for an SBOM event." So Nats is going to go and say,
Oh, I
okay,
see. Okay, I get it. It's like a
so
Kafka thing, like you were saying.
yeah, yeah. You think of Kafka on
Okay.
steroids.
Yeah, yeah. So all the other systems, so will Ortelius subscribe to Nats then, right?
Yeah. So on the consuming side, Ortelius only talks to cloud events in the NAT server.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
So that way,
So
when we look at whether we're interfacing with Spinnaker or Jenkins or GitHub, it doesn't matter to the Ortelius consumption side because it gets this SBOM event and it goes, oh, this is the SBOM event. I have the information that I need to consume the SBOM, as part of that, and bring that SBOM
mm.
into the Ortelius database. Does that?
Steve, when we were doing Captain, wasn't Captain doing something similar, sending out
Yes.
event-driven?
Yeah. Captain
So
Captain
do
has
those do those
events.
uh,
Argo has its events.
oh,
Knative.
so CD events, they would be sending all that in. Captain and all of those guys would be sending it to the subscribers. Like, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So let's say,
Okay. And listening for messages coming back or what?
yeah. So let's take the scenario of Argo. I don't know if Argo has implemented a CD event for deployment, but
Yeah.
let's say there is a CD event for deployment. Argo would publish, and let's say Argo has it already implemented, producing a CD event. So Argo would produce that it's starting a deployment process event, and then
Yeah.
it would produce a finished deployment event. So with that,
Yeah.
and Ortelius can listen for those, and we can now say that this component or this application has been deployed to this cluster by Argo, basically. So that's the nice thing, whether it's going to be Argo doing the deployment, if it's going to be Captain doing the deployment, Harness, somebody's just doing a kubectl apply through Helm. Doesn't really matter to us. We'll be able to be abstracted out from those events. I mean, from those native tools, and we just deal with the event layer.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool.
And all
It's
that,
going to be a lot
all
of
the,
event. But you obviously don't need to subscribe to everything. You just subscribe to what you want,
right,
what's meaningful. Okay,
right,
cool.
exactly. So if let's say somebody's producing testing events, we may ignore the testing events that are happening out there. Um, eventually, we may want to consume testing events and say that these test cases were run against this version of your artifact in this environment. So that may be something down the road that we want to subscribe to get notified of a testing event happening. But to start off with, we'd probably be only looking at a couple events. One is an artifact, basically uh, the start of a workflow, the end of a workflow, artifact publishing, and SBOM publishing. Those will probably be
Okay.
the
Yeah,
only
that makes sense.
four events that we're going to need to look for.
Yeah. So Ortelius could get really busy if you're in a
Uh,
large enterprise.
yeah, yeah, and that's kind of the dilemma that we're going to have to look at and really flesh out the requirements. That's why I kind of looked at the Nats because I know it's a pretty resilient message queue. Um, because if you look at just the number of, I believe GitHub has 350 million repos. So the amount of data that we're talking about, let's say we're able to go out and implement Ortelius for all 350 million repos. It's a lot of data, a lot of events flying around.
So what, are you gonna have a few deploy hubs, data centers around the world, Steve? You and Tracy?
Yep.
Yeah, that
We'll,
would be nice.
we'll be like Uber, running in every single data center and every single cloud
I think
provider.
you've got plenty of desert. You can expand into your desert there. You've got plenty of space, lots of sunshine, plenty of power. I don't know about the
Well,
water though.
Plenty of power, of course. That's what,
that's the weird thing here is well our state is actually trying to go 100% renewable in the next like 15 or 20 years. Um, the weird part is mostly based on wind generation. But if you look at
Hmm.
Nevada outside of Las Vegas, they have huge solar panel farms, miles long, and wind farms.
Cool.
When we drove through Texas for the eclipse, the amount of wind generators that are out there is staggering, thousands of them.
Yeah, amazing.
And they're huge. I mean, a single blade is
Yeah.
probably 300-400 feet long.
Yo, that's one way
But,
to slice up a turkey.
yep.
which is one of the complaints about solar is like, oh, the birds.
Is it? Yeah,
No.
they get
Yeah.
fried. eh?
Wind. They worry about the migration path of the birds and things like that.
Uh,
But they turn relatively slow. The big ones.
yeah, yeah. Definitely don't try skydiving in that area or paragliding or anything that involves flying of some sort. I saw there's examples here. They've got samples.
Oh,
They've got
cool.
tons. Yeah, like tons of events, samples.
So does anybody have any ideas other than the polling method? Um,
Jeez, when it comes to messaging, I don't have that much experience, to be honest. I've dabbled a bit with MQ and SNS and SQS and all those kind of things, but nothing too.
yeah, it's the Nats is like what was it RabbitMQ type of scenario. So if
Oh,
you
like rabbits.
if you can get
Yeah,
your head
okay.
around RabbitMQ, the Nats is going to be the same way. It's a pub
Oh,
sub
okay.
scenario.
Oh, that's okay. I think I could do. I do have some experience with it, but it was a while ago. That's why I'm building it at home, so I can understand this stuff. It just seems to be spreading.
Yep.
You've got like Argo, and now you've got Ortelius, and then you need Kubernetes, and then you need some pods, and then you need some security to store your secrets in, and then you need Argo to help you deploy it, and then you need now I need security. It just keeps like sprawling.
Yeah.
And that's before you've even gotten to Ortelius. Yeah.
And then let's see on the consumption side.
So I've got Nats running now, so I'll see if it's got a dashboard. The only way to keep up with this. I wonder if I can build a can you run the whole NFS thing? You know, the thing we have for not NFS. What's that blockchain? Oh man. Can you have it like a local blockchain storage that we're using? You know, that we're using for the can you build something like that at home? A file
Uh,
system.
it, more than likely not, because the way blockchain works is you have to have so many um, basically computers running in the pool to prevent the blockchain from being hijacked.
What I need is a local blockchain. Someone needs to solve this problem. A local with containers, like making my own private blockchain internally so
Right.
I can practice. Like private local blockchain storage, if you want to call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve, I have a question.
Yep. Go ahead,
So
Arvin.
like there are two types of queuing service. One is the normal queuing, one is the streaming. So like the SQS and RabbitMQ, they are in the queuing service. They are not real time. But like Kafka and AWS Kinesis, they are on the streaming service. They do the real time pulling. So that's, do we want real time service or not?
We have to look to see what Nats does. I don't think we need the real time. And one of the nice things about the Nats that I've seen is it is resilient. So if something goes down, it can recover at that level.
So is this better than Kafka, actually? It's like
Yes.
a newer, it's
Yeah.
a better messaging system, a more resilient, tougher, harder to break messaging system.
Yep.
Wow, pretty cool.
So the NAS is the real time.
Okay.
NAS, Kafka, and AWS Kinesis, it comes in the real time. RabbitMQ, SQS, and Scikit, it
Yeah.
comes in the queuing service.
Okay.
So like I was studying for the
Ah,
AWS
okay.
Solution Architect Associate exam, so it contained that node.
Yep.
So that's a good thing for us. Since it's supporting real time, we can actually do some real time reporting around that.
Yeah, and there's going to be things like you can hook in. You'll be able to hook in like Grafana, those type of things to kind of keep track of all the events that are happening on kind of on the back end of things. You know, through the logging facility and telemetry.
Yeah, it reminds me that Nokia actually shared maybe some months ago Prometheus and Grafana dashboard that is created for the Ortelius. We have to look for that.
Yep. So some of the
It was
questions.
actually deployed. Yeah, go ahead.
So let me just wrap this up real quick. Outstanding questions that we need to research. You know, one is going to be the ones I can think of. Do we persist the events long term? You know, so basically add them to a database.
So Steve, can you still build this at home even though you don't have that blockchain part? You can still set up an Ortelius at home, right? Like environment, like a dev environment. Okay.
Yeah, right now we have not hooked in the blockchain part, so we're just using the Orango database. So
Yeah.
we'll be able to do that without having the blockchain piece.
Maybe to make money for Ortelius, we could sell pies pre-installed with Ortelius, the whole thing configured for them.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah.
This open source project is open source, but makes money too.
It
And we
will
can sell it in
work.
dollars. I think it will work too.
It will work. I mean,
And then-
hackathons, it will be awesome for high schoolers or college students. They will love
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Let's
True,
get them
it's
young,
true.
you know. When
And
they
that
get out
may
of college,
be-
they already Ortelius conditioned. It's been brainwashed already. You know, this is what you use.
Yeah. And instead of giving away a T-shirt, we give away a pie.
Yeah, with an alien on it, a green pie with aliens all over it. Perfect.
Yeah.
And it's super accessible to people because people don't have much space in their homes. Like that's why I run it, and I have electricity problems, so I run a Pi, right? And it's powerful and it's small. You can take it anywhere with you. You can demo Ortelius like anywhere, you know. Like an SSD disk with 3 little Pis running an entire Ortelius cluster. Let's present it and show you how it works at the same time.
Sasha, to show how early it is for me or where I'm at, yeah, PIE. When you first said it, it's like, okay, we're going to deliver pies with the full stack.
With the full stack. It's not impossible.
And we're going to send you some coffee with your pie, Brian.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
but you have to
a funny marketing play. But we can put pies in
Yeah.
pots. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt.
With XRLP baked in there. So everybody wins.
Yeah.
But you have to be a Kickstarter funder of X amount before you get that. Yeah. I think it would work, eh? People spend money on the most ridiculous stuff. If you just look at the Play Store, there's people buying weird stuff there. I mean, this is way more educational.
One of the outstanding issues. Hey, Brian, you may know this. Is Brian still there? Or did he drop? He dropped as soon as I asked him a question. Oh, you're back.
I'm back. What was I was hitting leave just as you said, "Hey, Brian." Yeah, what's up?
Does CloudBees have? How does CloudBees help out open source projects? So, for example, is there like a free version of Jenkins SaaS that an open source project can use? Or does the open source project have to kind of stand up their own infrastructure to run Jenkins?
Open source project has to stand up their own infrastructure for when I last checked. So they primarily just help sort of as a corporate sponsor. They did providing the event framework, having the team that Mark Waits, Alyssa Tong lives on. There used to be a Fed ready or what was to be a Fed ready hardened version that people can download and use. But at this point, from what I can assess and what I know, they're not providing any distribution. They're not providing any SaaS infrastructure.
Okay. So the CloudBees Jenkins that's kind of hosted, or the SaaS version is mostly used by corporations then, is that correct?
Well, their SaaS version is a completely different product. Their commercial product called CI, CloudBees CI, is a commercially packaged version of Jenkins that is for pay.
And is that a hosted version or is that a on-prem or both?
No, it's on-prem.
Okay. So does CloudBees have a SaaS version at all, if anything?
No, what they do have, like if you go to the AWS sort of DevOps marketplace, basically, so it's an on-prem version, but it's was built on top of a Kubernetes layer so that people can deploy it to their virtual private clouds, or otherwise they can deploy it in the cloud.
Right. Okay.
I'm just kind of noticed that I got a 15-minute window for another convo, so I'm going to drop.
All right.
Thanks.
That's about
I'm
it.
gonna follow up, and I'm going to join the architecture meetings more as we approach this year, as we dig into the Hero project.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
So that does
Steve,
kind of.
I shared the
Yeah.
link in the chat. Can you look into that?
Look
I
into
shared the
what?
Grafana dashboard of Ortelius in the Zoom chat.
Oh, let me look.
Can you open that link?
Yep, I'm here. This is all the GitHub repo stuff.
Yeah, it's the Ortelius Grafana dashboard.
Yeah, what they're doing is they go off and scrape the metrics, and then they run it through the Grafana dashboard to do the graphing and stuff. I use this for our creating our badges.
Okay.
Yeah, this is all of our. And I usually have a custom query that I run to find what I need out of this data for doing our badging programs and stuff.
Got it.
So I'll use some of these, like PR comments is one of the ones I'll execute. Things like that, some of these reports. That is an interesting point, Arvin. So when we talk about the amount of data, if we're going to handle like 350 million GitHub repos, Google does provide free storage for data. So like the OpenSSF project, they push all their data into, I think it's called BigQuery. And BigQuery, the data storage is free, but they charge you per transaction. So if you do over 1 million transactions, it's going to cost you X number of dollars on that front. So that may be a solution for persisting some of these events. So if we want a long-term persistence of all the events that are happening out there, we can get that for free because you're only going to be querying the most recent stuff and not necessarily historical stuff as much. So that may be a way to handle the large data down the road.
Can we apply for the Google Cloud credit as an open source project?
I'm not familiar with that one. I'd have to double check with the Linux because it gets a little tricky because we're part of the Linux Foundation and they've applied for that. So sometimes they don't allow us to double dip, and that we'd have to go up to the Linux Foundation to get that stuff. So like we can't go back to Google and get Kubernetes credits because the Linux Foundation's already getting Kubernetes credits for a bunch of projects.
Got it. Thanks.
So any questions on kind of what we got going on with the Hero project and kind of the layout of what we need to do? It's very high level. We'll have to dive into more of the, I would say, write up a requirements document, kind of like what we did with the blockchain piece. Create the requirements document, make sure we have all the non-functional requirements in place, the functional requirements, and then scope out what we want to accomplish, and then kind of figure out where we want to attack first. I know Jenkins would be a great place because they have so many workflows being run, but that's the hard part is it's not like the Jenkins servers are public servers we can access. So for something like GitHub, we can go, there's a bunch of public repos out there that we can start that are being used for open source projects that we can go ahead and start querying and gathering data from those. So it's going to be something that we need to look at to figure out our actual starting point on that front. And like I said, we have the two sides. One's the producing side of the event, and the second's going to be the consuming side. Any questions?
I always thought Captain was.
Yeah,
sorry,
Sasha.
I always thought Captain was kind of that thing already, but I guess it wasn't, right? Wasn't it? Wasn't Captain also listening for events before it kicked off stuff? Wouldn't it wait for feedback? Wasn't
It
it a
had,
similar type of idea?
yeah, so Captain does use Knative events. So it does have that capability, but it doesn't produce cloud events. Now you can
Okay.
write a Captain plugin to produce cloud events. So that is one of the things that you could do on the Captain side.
Yeah, so I misunderstood Captain then. So Captain was if you thought Captain was this little cloud on its own, it only produced for events for itself, right?
For
Is that right?
that
Or am I
that Kubernetes
misunderstanding?
cluster, yep.
Only, yeah. Okay. It wasn't like consume all events and you subscribe to me if you want them all. Consume whatever event. There's wasn't something that consumed events, any event from any process or system, right? It was only yeah, okay. It was only unique to Captain and that cluster. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and the plugins that were installed into it. So if you wanted to listen to like a GitHub trigger event, you'd have to go and configure Captain to listen for that that GitHub commit event, for example.
Yeah, okay. But they were on the right track, right? They were kind of moving in that direction, right? That kind of event-driven type of thing.
Yes, it is definitely an event driven, and they may have, since we've looked at them, added the cloud events to it.
Yeah, what I've seen is that they've deprecated that Captain that I didn't,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
one that we drew, and now it's the lifecycle tool.
Yeah,
I've deployed it because I want to use it with Ortelius, but I haven't gotten there to configure it. I need to really sit down and think how it works, and then I want to take an application and deploy it using what pipeline tool should I use? Should I use Tecton or something? What pipeline tool can I use to produce events to push them to Ortelius so that I can have my home labs set up with Ortelius? What do you recommend? Is there something that you can recommend us?
well, I think
So
that's going to be our starting point. Is I think we should figure out which one of these tools we want to start with,
Yeah.
and that will be our starting point for that scenario that you're talking about.
Because I've got a secret manager now. I've got Argo to do the GitOps
deployment.
model, and I've got
Yep.
Ortelius running, but I don't have a pipeline now, and I've got Kubernetes, right? And I've got a Ingress, which is Trafic, and
Yep.
then I'll blog about it so that other people can build it for themselves too, and also have their own Ortelius dev environment if they want to.
And you could, in that scenario, you could do something like Tecton.
Do you recommend? Is Tecton cool? I've never used it. Do you recommend it? I mean, is there
I've never used it either.
Okay.
But that is going to be one of the CI/CD tools that we want to look at. Now, Red Hat uses Tecton a lot. They've built a lot of their products around Tecton. So, the whole conversation is about adoption. How do we get people to adopt? And that's where we need to figure out.
Do you get clients that ask you for recommendations? I mean, it obviously depends on the environment, right? Everyone's unique, eh?
That usually is internal discussions where some development team wants to use Tecton, some teams want to use Jenkins, some want to use GitLab. So all those different things.
And you can't run GitHub Actions locally, can you?
No.
To mimic Ortelius, the way we deploy stuff.
Right. We could hook up the producing side where we go out and pull GitHub for the start and stop of the workflows. There's some easy commands. It's the GH command line.
Yeah, the GH command line tool. Yeah.
So you can use the GH command line to go and pull a repo to see if a workflow is started. So there's things on that front that we can. Yep.
Okay. I was just trying to see how close I could make my environment to the current Ortelius open source environment,
Yep. Now the interesting part would be GitLab. I think you can install GitLab locally as a community.
Yeah, I'll just check that.
check that out. Do some research on running GitLab locally in a Kubernetes cluster, or just because that would be another one of our solutions that we need to look at.
Yes, you're right, Steve. Self-managed GitLab.
Yeah.
No, you will face some problem when running the GitLab runners.
I can
Because
probably run
if you
it
run
in Kubernetes. Yeah, here's a Kubernetes deployment, a Helm chart. Oh my word! Why doesn't
Yeah, so that may
it
be
takes a
the
lot of memory.
so that may give us a pretty good starting point if we did GitLab and GitHub. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Like I said, that the nice thing with if you look at GitHub, is a bunch of repos are out there, are public repos. So a lot of the open source projects are using GitHub for their repos. So the open source community is pretty easy to gather their data passively without them doing anything. And then that kind of folds into, once we start gathering the data about those projects, we can then look down the road doing our generative AI to help fix their workflows. Add in a scorecard. We could easily do a pull request, fork their repo, do a pull request to say, add this GitHub action for scorecard, or take your existing build process for Docker and turn these flags on to generate the SBOM automatically and do signing. So those are things that, with the being public repos in a public build system, that we have a lot of ways to interact with them. Like Brian was saying on the Jenkins side, if an open source project is using a Jenkins server that's not running on somebody's virtual machine in the cloud or underneath their desk on an old piece of hardware, that we may not have the access we can to get to that information.
Yeah.
I wish Jenkins had a better, it was more accessible.
Yeah.
But we'll have to do some digging around. So those are just some of my initial thoughts.
Okay, cool. So I'll install a GitLab server in my Kubernetes cluster.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we're collecting quite a lot of things here. What have we got? Ortelius, we've got XLP, Orango, Kubernetes. If you want to have some fun, you can
still.
Still got Postgres.
You're going to need to buy.
A lot of technology.
You're going to have to buy another like a dozen pies to run everything.
Yeah, but they're cheap, even for South Africa. 2,000 Rand for a pie. It's like, really? I can run an 8-core, 8 gig little pie for $2,000. That is nothing, man. Divide that by 20 for dollars. You should come buy it here. I should send it to you.
Yeah, the shipping. the shipping will be like
gazillions. Yeah,
it'll be $1,000 to ship it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they're probably being made in Africa somewhere. I know China has been doing a lot of manufacturing in Africa.
Yes, man, my Pi system, now that I've got it running and I've got new SD cards, I upgraded mine. Now I've got it running, runs fast. It is so good. Yeah.
I know one of the guys from Oracle, he was basically on the cloud team for rolling out the Kubernetes infrastructure on Oracle. And he'd go to a trade show with like a couple hundred pies and put them into a cluster and have them all stacked up on the table with them all flashing, showing that they're doing stuff. So
it always looks good, eh? Like the Vegas Strip. That's what you want on your desk at your.
We need a lot of LEDs.
You can actually call it the Tech Vegas Strip. You should market it out there. Ortelius Tech Vegas Strip. I don't know. You can think of something better than that, probably, but yeah.
All right. Any questions? Like I said, this is just to get everybody on kind of get us on the ground started. We'll do some formal requirements docs, figure out the next steps, those type of things. Like I said, if you want to play with things, play with the NATs, see if you can get some of the demo stuff working. And Sasha, I'd be definitely interested to see how the GitLab piece works, running it locally.
Okay. I'll deploy it now.
Yep.
Elizabeth, you're going to deploy your own machine learning platform in Kubernetes, right?
Oh yeah, I'm working on that. I'm actually working on a little bit of everything. But right now, I'm gonna do some research for the functional and non-functional requirements. I have this as data gathering and for data consumption, provenance, and attestation. And I think I'm gonna give it a try to GitLab and Jenkins just to see what I can do. And if this is
Cool.
kind of like RabbitMQ, I may have to go back a little bit, but I think I can get it to work in Docker. So I'm gonna give it a try.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna search
Yeah,
for
that's cool.
PyP for the packages to see what we can gather with that.
Yeah.
That's
And when you look at the NATs message queue routing, make sure you look at it handling cloud events. Because that's what CDEvents are, just a standardized cloud event format. So they add some extra payload to it. But if you could get a generic cloud event working with the NATs, then we can extend it out. So that's where we want to focus.
You can run local stack, AWS, the full local. You can run AWS in your local environment and use that as your cloud tester for the NATs. We could do that.
Yeah, I don't think it'll matter if it's running in an AWS or if it's running in Kind or whatever. I don't think the Kubernetes cluster really matters. That's more of an infrastructure thing than the functionality of NATs.
I was thinking that you could use local stack as a pseudo AWS that you could use as a way of sending information to NATs, maybe on your local network even, to just to simulate a cloud talking event, producing events like on a global scale, but it's actually just on your local network, right?
Yeah. So a cloud event is just a way to publish. If you guys got like 2 seconds more, let me share my screen.
Everything that's in CloudLog.
Yeah, so
we can use my Azure account.
Enable every single logging thing for every single cloud service. That's a cloud event, right? Isn't that a cloud event going into a log?
it's a specific format.
No.
Let me get logged in here. I'll show you what. I actually did some.
Yeah, Bo.
Hello.
Yeah, Arvin.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh yeah, we can use my Azure cloud account. We have a lot of projects. We can use a pretty heavy Kubernetes cluster.
Here it is.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you got students get all these rad, amazing free things today.
So I just basically went out and so I just asked.
I was born in the wrong generation.
Yeah, I asked chat how to use NATs for cloud events.
Yeah.
And basically, it comes up with some pretty simple pieces. So this here is your NAT server. So this would be in your Kubernetes cluster. So it assumes I'm running Kubernetes locally. And it's going to say I'm going to subscribe to a cloud event that was published. So what it does is it puts itself into a loop. And when somebody publishes the event, it's basically just going to print out the message. Now, on the other side, if we publish a cloud event, I'm going to go ahead and just connect up to the NAT server, create the event, which is this subject. Make this bigger so you can see it. So basically it's just a message string that's in the right cloud event format. And then you just send it over to the socket and it's good. So here's an example cloud event data. that it's publishing off to that. So
What?
yeah.
Is that something sending a message in and then that's it sending it out?
So
to
this
somewhere
is
else?
this is a message sending it in, and this other
Yeah.
program
In JSON, right?
is going to pull it.
Stuff's
Yeah,
all
it's all
JSON.
JSON. It's all JSON.
Okay. Okay.
So here, here's a more elaborate listener because it goes into a loop.
Yeah.
And it basically says, go out and loop for all of the events that are being published. So it's pretty simple on that front. So if you look
Okay,
at, so
awesome.
that's all the messages. It's just the JSON that being pushed, and there's certain pieces that are needed. So you have to have the an ID. You have to have which is just going to be a unique message ID, the source, who's sending it, what is the event type, and then the data.
And then so
And then on the
Elizabeth
receiving,
and Arthur they're gonna build their own clusters, and then so NAT server is gonna send me a message, and I'm gonna send my message back to them. Just think of
Yep.
that. We could do that globally. It would be fun.
Yep, and you could
You'd learn
actually
so much.
Yeah. So it's pretty simple. So if you literally just go into chat and just ask it, how can you use NATS for cloud events?
Okay.
And
Cool.
then basically ask, how do you publish the cloud events to NATS? So I wanted to do it directly to the socket, simulating like a generic cloud event being pushed over. So I didn't want to use a specific client. I wanted to format a really generic message and send it over.
So on your application side in Kubernetes, you would tell all the applications, for example, I know we don't want everything, but I'm just talking hypothetically, like your pipeline, send it to the NAT server, Kubernetes. If there's any events that you need there, send it to the NAT server, right?
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah. So we
And
have
then Ortelius subscribes to the NAT server to receive the information and to store it and make it nice for people to search and understand, right? What's going on.
Exactly.
All right. Okay. That's cool. That's a really cool model.
Yep. So
but where does so I was confused with CDEvents. Where does that fit in?
it is a wrapper around cloud events.
Oh, okay.
So that JSON that we're just
is that how you interface with it? Is that how you interface with NATS or what?
Yeah. So let me share my screen again.
Sorry, I'm just trying to understand how the whole thing kind of fits together.
Let me find where did Zoom go. Oh. Okay. So in my chat GPT, I have this cloud event right here. Right?
Yeah.
Just a JSON. So if you go to and we look at an example. So this is a pipeline run event. So you can see how it has the context source and has a subject. It is very similar to our source type data over here. So what it's doing is they've gone out and created standardized JSON formats.
Yeah.
So what it does is it converts a CD event into a cloud event, and then you post the cloud event to where it says post to some URL. That would be posting it over to our NAT server.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense now.
So is it helping link the pieces together?
Yeah. Yeah, I was a bit fuzzy on that. I'm probably gonna have to come back to it because I'm gonna build this internally at home, right? So I want to mimic Ortelius. It's the only way to learn. Because like
Yeah.
sometimes
So
I also get totally lost. I'm like, where are we again?
so the first part is just to get a cloud event that you have a program, a publish, a producing side for the cloud event, and then you have a consuming side of the cloud event, and then you have your nats in the middle. So you'll need to have like a Python program that does the publish or the
Yeah,
produces the cloud event. You're going to talk to
yeah,
your NAT server that's running in Kubernetes, and then your other
yeah.
Python program is going to be the consuming side that's going to listen for that event to be added to the NAT server. So once you have that
Okay.
scenario down where we can publish a cloud event from Python, it goes into the NAT server, and then we have another Python program that receives that cloud event. Once we have that link working, we can then move over to using the the CDEvents structures. Because
Okay, so that's just so you can get an understanding of how it's working together, right?
yeah,
Okay.
making sure
Is
the
that like
plumbing.
is that like two clients? It's like a
Yeah,
it's like a client pushing message, another one subscribing to that message or what?
yeah, it's a pub sub model.
Pub sub model, yeah, okay. So I would then need to configure Trafic to allow messages to come into my NAT server running in Kubernetes.
Yeah, you have to let it to come into 442 or 4
Yeah,
442.
4222.
Yeah, thank you.
And then I'll blog it. And then I'll blog all of this. And then anybody else who's building stuff that's similar to what our meeting was about, we should add that to the blog too.
Yep. And then and the reason why I picked the Nats is Nats like you did today. Nats is super easy to stand up in Kubernetes. It's
Yeah. Jeez, it took
so
me like 5 minutes.
yeah. Instead of dealing with
Yeah.
RabbitMQ or Kafka
Yeah.
or
I couldn't believe
um,
it. I was like, let me check this out. I was like, oh, it's done.
yeah. So in the Nats, they should have some sample code for you to test it out.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. I'll put the Argo command in the dev channel
Okay,
for
cool.
other people if they have Argo. I mean, if they don't, then I'll have to use Helm or something.
Yeah.
I'm using Argo, so I learn Argo, so it forces me to bash my head against Argo.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Oh,
does
this
that
is
make
cool.
sense?
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it looks cool.
And it looks like Elizabeth put some links into the chat. Grab those before we leave about doing what we just talked about. They have a pub sub
Yeah.
examples.
I'll put the GitLab ones too, but I'll put them in the dev. I'll put them in the share channel in the Discord too, so you can run your own GitLab.
Yep.
'Cause I'm gonna start with that because it makes sense. Yeah.
Put this.
Tata does
Steve,
use
does
the
deploy
Azure
have
cloud. Just
What
use the Azure cloud for setting up the Kubernetes cluster if you need like more extra workload.
you want to do? What with a Kubernetes cluster?
I shared my Azure cloud cluster with the Tata subscription. Like
Cool.
he can use the credit for the experiment.
So
Yeah, and I
Sasha,
will deploy
give me some free stuff.
Arvind is, I don't know, the students today, Steve, I was born in the wrong generation, eh? I didn't get any cool stuff, but nothing, eh? You
Oh
guys get all the
yeah.
cool stuff.
You got some
Actually,
cool.
I haven't used anything for the cloud. So anything on the GitHub developer pack for the cloud that you want to use, just let me know and I will send it to you.
We'll have to get
Guys,
Sasha. All you got were some
awesome.
cool T-shirts. That was it.
I didn't even get t-shirts, Steve. I was also recording the wrong.
All right,
You know what
guys.
my computer was? A green screen, Hercules computer, floppy disks.
There you go. All right, I
CRC
gotta run.
errors.
We'll see ya.
Bye.
All right. Thank
Check
you,
you
Sue.
later.
Thanks.